the National Guards, we have the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Marines, and so on and so forth, right? So different categories of people, but doing the same job of defending the country, both from internal attack as well as from external attack. So in the same way, our body has got a defense system, just like the way I described about the people protecting our country. In the same way, our body has a natural defense system that recognizes mostly the self from the non-self. So when I talk about non-self, I'm talking about any external agents, all right? So just like the Army and the Navy and the Air Force, our body has got different elements that play a key role in defending the body. And the function of the immune system is mainly crucial in preventing degeneration, in preventing any damage to the tissue, in preventing any infections, even cancer, and so on and so forth. So that's the definition of the immune system as such. And so now you can imagine why it is important, mainly because not only are we protecting ourselves from any external agents that could be either a virus or a bacteria or any kind of allergens, the body is there to make sure that you are not developing any kind of problems from the entry of these molecules into your body. So that's the main definition of, that's the main goal of the immune system. Now, just like the players, we too have in our body different kinds of players. If you look at, the two things that you must have heard about in today's pandemic era, the two things that you must have heard about in TV and other media is innate system and the adaptive system. Okay, so basically the innate system is a system. They call it non-specific, but not exactly non-specific. It's something that immediately rushes into our body when it sees something that is not self, that is something that is foreign. Okay, and there are specific molecules that do this job. The minute they see something foreign, they say, aha, this is not the body, this is not the part of this person, it is something foreign, we need to defend this person. And so they go all out and they try to destroy, or they try to weaken, or they even, in some cases, they even fight and engulf. They actually eat up those foreign molecules, so to say. Now, on the other hand, you also have another system called the adaptive system. The adaptive system is more orchestrated. It's more of an engineering, in the sense there's a design, okay? And then there's an entire design, and then there's a production. And then after production, there is an amplification. So what happens is, these are specific molecules that the body uses for a long-term basis of defense system. So that's the thing. If you are, the thing that you hear is antibodies. Okay, so antibodies are nothing but part of the adaptive immune system, which actually takes a little longer to make, because the body has to go through this process of design, production, and amplification. And then once it is produced, the antibody then tries to defend the body from these external agents. So that, in short, is the immune system.
I like your metaphor of a defense around a country. I think that really works well. And I also like your clarification of the adaptive and innate systems. That's really helpful to know about, especially in light of viruses and the pandemic. So what things or situations weaken our defenses, weaken our immune system, and why?
Okay, that's a very important question. So what are the things or situations that weaken the immune system? So I like to think of it as external and internal. So two systems that can weaken our immune system. External would be any long-term use of medications. Okay, so there are people who are taking a lot of medications for chronic conditions. And unfortunately, so to say, what happens is, these are the medications that actually suppress our immune system. Okay, we call it anti-inflammatories. Okay, and anti-inflammatories, they bring down the immune system. So you can imagine now, it's like trying to suppress our defense forces and saying, no, you're not going out anywhere, you're just being here. So now if you get invaded by a foreign agent, the defense system is not there to attack. The same thing happens to us. If we take some of these drugs that suppress the immune system, then if we happen to have an infection, then our immune system is not prepared to defend the body. Okay, so that's one way, that's one of the reasons why long-term usage of these chronic medications is supposedly not a good idea. In addition, people who have cancer and who are undergoing radiation therapy or who are undergoing chemotherapy, you might look at the thing, when they are undergoing some of these therapies like chemotherapy or radiation therapy, that usually goes on for 6 months to 9 months, in some cases even a year long. Okay, and these are very powerful medications. It actually brings down the immune system so low that the person is not able to defend themselves against any external attack. And if you notice, most of the deaths that have occurred from the COVID-19 situation are people who have had some kind of a comorbid condition. That is, they've had a predisposition to either cancer or some kind of an inflammatory condition where they were taking these drugs. And so what happens is these drugs, long-term usage actually brings down or suppresses the immune system. In addition, people who have undergone organ transplants. So you see what happens is when you undergo some kind of an organ transplant, whether it's liver transplant or kidney transplant, in order that, now that is actually a non-self, right? It was not the original organ that was there in the body. It is coming from somebody else. Even though they do match the blood type and everything, but still it is a foreign, so to say, for the body. And so the body tries to fight that new organ or the new tissue, all right? So to prevent that from happening, what happens is when you get an organ transplant, the doctors issue these medications that suppress the immune system. So you can imagine now, so organ transplantations is another case where people can have their system that is weakened. In addition, if you have prior infections could be from either tuberculosis, flu virus, measles, mononucleosis, or AIDS. In all these conditions, your immune system is already compromised because it's trying to fight out that system, all right? And now on top of that, if you get something more, then it doesn't work so efficiently. In addition, poor diet, poor quality sleep, smoking, alcohol consumption in large amounts also causes suppression of the immune system. Nicotine, so cigarette smoking is another great condition where the immune system is compromised. Now, people do not generally think about this, but even things like prolonged sitting. So when you talk about sedentary activities, all right, sedentary activities also causes a suppression of the immune system. And then we have, people who are extremely, I would say, very prone to exercises, or they think that exercise is very good. Exercise, no doubt, is very good. But then these are the people who get so used to it that they want to do it 3 times a day or 4 times a day. That's a big no-no, because what's happening is you are actually exhausting your energy reserves. And when you exhaust your energy reserves, you're actually weakening the immune system. So those are the conditions where the immune system actually is suppressed. And so we have to be very mindful about these situations or these conditions. So those are all the external ones. Now, there is also what we call internal factors. Internal factors could be because of constant mental stress, okay? Fear, worry, anxiety, anger, depression, rage, all these can depress the immune system, and prolonged negativity. So people don't talk about this, but these are all mental conditions that affect the immune system. In addition to all this, you can have a low immune system from other parameters that are low in the body, like, for example, now vitamins. Generally, vitamins like vitamin D, vitamin B12, vitamin C, and then minerals like zinc, or if you're taking a high-fat diet or highly processed food, recreational drugs, poor hygiene, all these are conditions where the immune system can be compromised.
So Ram, can you talk a little bit more about the relationship between sleep and your immune system?
Yeah, so what happens is people wonder, what is it about sleep and what is it about immune system? So what happens is sleep is a stage. Usually when we talk about a sleep, we're talking about a minimum of 6 to 8 hours of undisturbed sleep. Okay, during that process, even though we are sleeping, we may think that the body is not doing anything, but that's not true. There's a lot of what we call autonomic activities that happen in the brain and in the body in the presence when you're sleeping. Okay, one of the main things that happen during sleep is wound repairs. So if you have any repairs of the wound, that's the time when the body uses the energy to repair any wounds. Not only that, if you are trying to recover from a condition, like let's say you are having a fever, or you're having an infection, or you're having some kind of a surgery, these are the conditions where the body needs time and all the energy of the body needs to go into that direction for healing to happen. Okay, so that's the reason why sleep is very important, because sleep is the time when the body uses all its energy reserves to maintain that activity or to improve that activity. So that's the reason why if you have a low immune system, okay, or if for some reason you have a compromised immune system, the best thing is to do is, even though people say that, oh, our sleep is also compromised, you have to bring in all kinds of, any kind of conditions that will improve sleep, not from drugs. Okay, you don't want to induce, on one hand, if your immune system is weak, you don't want to use a drug to bring sleep. Okay, you don't want to use things that will promote sleep. You want to make sure that it's all natural ways, but make sure that you have an undisturbed sleep, at least even if it is 6 hours. That sleep is very good enough, is very good to promote the immune system, to enhance your immune system properly.
Great. Well, thank you. That's a great answer. So we know now of some things that are the majority of things that are affecting the immune system. What are some ways to support a healthy immune system then?
Yeah, that's another great answer. So people may ask, okay, I have this condition, underlying condition. Okay, so what do I do now? I cannot stop those drugs. So what do I do? Okay, so in all those cases, what I say is, if you think your immune system is compromised, there are a lot of things you can do. You don't have to stop your medication. In fact, I'm not even going in that direction. I'm not saying that you should stop your medication. All I'm saying is there are ways that you can promote your immune system so that your immune system can now direct its attention on the problems that you're facing. So for example, now, it's so interesting because in the COVID-19 situation, one of the things that researchers have realized, CDC has realized, NIH has realized, is that they think that preventative steps is very important in order that you don't get the COVID-19 infection. Okay, and what are the things that they're talking about when it comes to preventative? They are trying to bring about a drug that you can use, the preventative medicine. Okay, to prevent the COVID-19 infection. And nobody talks about digestion, nobody talks about sleep, nobody talks about exercises. And to me, that's the most important part when it comes to preventative. Okay, so when you talk of preventive or preventative ways to improve your immune system, whether you're taking a drug or not, whether you're immune compromised or not, what you need to do is, number one, make sure that your digestion is extremely, extremely optimal. Okay, it should not be weak, because if you have a good digestion, whatever kind of drugs you take, whether it's immune compromised drugs, immune suppressant, any kind of anti-anxiety drugs or antidepressants, whatever drugs, all those powerful drugs you take, if you have a good digestion, the after effects of those drugs or the negative side effects of the drugs is minimized only if you have a good digestion. So digestion is paramount to building a good immune system. Okay, that's number one. And then of course, sleep is a must. So a combination of good digestion and sleep. In addition to that, you need to have a good physical and mental exercise. Okay, physical exercise, you can do a 1 hour, not prolonged physical activity that will depress your immune system. You need to do enough so that you can build your immune system. And I would suggest, normally I recommend about 1 hour of physical exercise. Okay, whatever it be, whether it's swimming or tennis or outdoor activities or yoga, stretches, walking, running, whatever you need to do. Okay, make sure that you do it at least for 1 hour. And then physical exercise is just not enough. You have to do mental exercise as well. Okay, because immunity, it's interesting, because when we talk about immunity, people think about the blood system and the physical body, but they forget that there's something else here. We have the brain, we have the mind, there's thoughts, there's emotions. Those are all the ones that build the immunity as well. People do not correlate that, but the immune system, when you talk about a good immune system or an optimal immune system, it's coming from your emotions, from your brain, and from your body. So you need to have positive emotions. You need to have a good brain, in the sense that the brain should be very active. So to build a good brain or build a good nervous system or build good neuronal connections, you need to do mental exercise as well. Along with mental exercise, you do physical exercise. So those are some of the things that you can do. And then in addition to that, you have to be, make sure you have a proper hygiene practices, oral hygiene as well as other hygiene practices. Okay, hand washing and all the things that people have been telling us. try to avoid people who have infections. Okay, so especially because you are trying to build your own immune system, so you want to avoid people who already have a infection. Okay, make sure that you are up to date with all your vaccinations. Okay, be diligent about all the other things that people are saying when it comes to wearing a mask and all those things. And then the other thing that you need to do is, which people normally don't think about, is make sure that you have a positive disposition. Okay, whether when you interact with people, when you interact socially, you always need to be positive. That in itself is a very great way to build up your immune system. So it has to come at the level of the body, it has to come at the level of the mind, it has to come at the level of the emotions. And then at the level of the body, and then there's one more thing, and I'll stop at that is, remember one thing, your immunity is built from your kitchen. So your kitchen is the place, it's the most holiest of all the places in your house where you can build your immune system. So now you know why I'm putting a lot of importance to the kitchen, because that's where, because remember, if there's no other activity that you do so judiciously, so well in your lifetime, and that is eating. Minimum, at least you have 3 meals a day. I'm not talking about snacking. I mean, there are a lot of people who snack a lot, but minimum 3 meals. So if you're doing one activity that is so prominent throughout your lifetime, you need to make sure that your eating is the perfect way to bring about an important physical body, mental structure, as well as the emotional structure.
Ram, you mentioned exercises for our brain, and that's not something that I think many people in the West talk about, because we look at our as a physical body. So can you talk about exercises for the brain and what you mean by that?
Yeah. So what happens is, it's and this is all, again, whatever I'm telling you is not something that I pull out from the space. This is all evidence based. They're all research studies to support this. Okay. When you talk about mental exercise, what happens is, when the term exercise, people think about either running outside, tennis, or swimming, or yoga and all that stuff, but they don't realize that there's another part of exercise that involves the brain as well. So what happens is, even though we don't have, unlike other organs, the brain, once you're born with a defined number of cells. Okay. And then what happens is, it could be billions of cells. What happens is, these cells don't multiply like in other cases, like the liver or kidney. Okay. But what happens is, the cell, imagine like a tree. So what happens is, a tree, it puts out a lot of branches, right? And then, in fact, the gardener comes, he trims the branches, it grows more. So that's what you need to do. You need to have a lot of connections, and that new neural connections, we call it sprouting of neurons. Okay. So the term sprouting means putting out new branches. The more it sprouts, the more is your brain strengthened. All right. Because what happens is, those new branches of the neurons, they feed into other areas of the brain, or they feed into other areas around the brain that will produce more and more stimulus that will help the body and the brain. So the question is, and how do you improve these neuronal connections? How do you improve these branches? All right. And the way to improve the branches is to engage in mental exercise. Now, physical exercise, you can think there is swimming, there is yoga, there's tennis, there's gym and all that. But what exactly is mental exercise? So mental exercise is something where you have to repeatedly do some functions that will improve your memory. For example, now, let's say you're taking a walk. Okay. Or let's say you're coming home from workplace. How many of you actually remember all the names of the avenues and the streets and the road leading to your home? Not many of us, because why? We have come in an automatic mode wherein we know which lane to take, whether it's a right turn or left turn and all that, but we don't remember the names of the streets. We don't remember the names of the lanes. Okay, so that's something that you can incorporate now. Next time when you go out, this is what I'm doing these days because of the COVID-19 situation. We are shelter in place. What I do is, when I take a long walk, I actually try to recall and remember all the lanes and the roads from my home to the place where I go to and then coming back. And then every day I try to recall the names. It's just not recalling the names. Can you recall the names after 1 hour, after 4 hours, after 8 hours? Okay, so that's about linking your physical exercise with the mental exercise, as well. In addition, when you go out into, let's say you have a yard or a garden, okay, and there are a lot of flowers and a lot of trees. How much attention do you pay to that? Okay, do you just look at it and then you just walk away, or do you actually sit there and then look at the shape, the size, the color, the number of flowers? And then the question is not just about looking at them, but then can you recall the structure, the shape, the colors, everything? Just not about the flowers, but even in any, let's say you're in your office place, okay, or you're in your dental office, or you're in the clinic. Look around and see what are all the shapes and objects and their size and the shape and colors and everything. Try to recall them later on. Okay, so that is one kind of an exercise system. The other thing that you can do is, let's say you're one way to anything that can challenge your brain. For example, now I'm a right-handed person. Okay, I've been using my right hand since the time I was born. Okay, so now the question is, can I use the same activities using my non-dominant hand, say my left hand? Okay, so that's like you're trying to improve the brain system so that now all the activities that you're doing from the right side, you're not doing from the left side, or vice versa. Okay, so using a non-dominant hand. So now this is a challenge. Okay, I'm able to eat with my left hand very well now. But then if I have to use a mouse, especially a PC mouse, okay, it's going to be very difficult. It's very challenging. Okay, but it's very good for the brain. That's one thing. The other thing is where you can improve your mental activities by using all those things that where you have to use your brain system activity. Like for example, now things like card games like Sudoku or bridge, any of those activities where you have to think logically. Okay, those are very good. So puzzles of any kind. Okay, that's another system. That's another place where you can exercise your brain. Okay. In the book, Howard, I mentioned, I don't know if you recall, but in the book I mentioned that, so what happens is there is an analogy. In London, the cab drivers are supposedly, I'm not talking about the Uber cab drivers, I'm talking about the regular cab drivers. They have to undergo a 6-month exhaustive test, okay, where they have to memorize all the lanes, the by lanes, and the main streets of London city, okay? It's interesting because somebody did research and they went on to show that when you compare the brains of people who are in the bus drivers, and then the cab drivers, they showed that the cab drivers, their brains were much more active, and they went on to progress, not into, their brains were very active. They didn't have memory losses with age as compared to the bus drivers. The bus drivers, because they are employees of the bus association, they have to follow the same path over and over every day, okay? Whether there's a blockage, whether there's construction, they cannot change the routes. Whereas the cab drivers, because they knew all the routes, they took the shortest path, okay? And that's how they exercise their brains. Now, I mentioned the book. I don't know how much the US postal people appreciate this, but there is something about the US postal service in India, I mean, in this country as well. Remember, what happens is, not the FedEx people, not the UPS people, but the US Postal Service. Because our mailbox is on the right side, these drivers, the postal drivers, their steering wheel is on the right side. So when they come to office, they have to come from their car to take the US postal car, which is on the right side. And then when they finish their work, they go to their car, they have to move on the left side. So you can imagine that left and right situation for the US postal workers. My bet is, nobody has done this research, but I can bet that if they do the right things along with their job, doing the right things, meaning doing the right kind of food and exercise, I'm sure these people do not have memory losses. So that's mental exercise or mental training.
Great, those are great examples, Ram. What do the timeless, and I'm sure we could probably spend many hours just talking about this question, but maybe you can give us a little insight. What do the timeless practices of yoga and Ayurveda teach us about having a healthy immune system?
Yeah, so it's so interesting because both yoga and Ayurveda, they always focused not on the individual. Okay, when I say individual, not in the physical body, but they always talked about the mind, and they talk about the emotions, the spiritual aspects as well. So yoga always talked about using, there's a nice Sanskrit verse and I don't want you to memorize this something. I just want you to listen to this, because I want you to know that I'm not pulling this from my hat. It's there in the system. So what they say is, yoga anga anusthanad ashuddhi kshaye jnana dipita aveveka kyate. That is, they say that through the practice of yoga, you are eliminating all impurities from your body. Your mind is clear, your emotions are under control, and you become a true wise individual. Okay, so but then they're talking about incorporating all aspects. Okay, so you need to have a good physical practice, you need to have a good mental practice, you need to have a good emotional practice as well. So, and if you look at yoga, yoga has those 8 limbs, what we call the Ashtanga yoga, all right, the 8 limbs. And the first 2 or 3 limbs is all about physical practices. They talk about yamas and niyamas and asanas. So it's all about maintaining proper hygiene, maintaining proper physique, maintaining proper breath practices, all those things. And then you have the pratyahara and then dharana. This is mainly at the level of the mind. Okay, so making sure that you take the right impressions through your 5 sensory organs, making sure that these impressions are nourishing your body, mind, and emotions. And then they talk about meditation, they talk about breath practices, pranayama, and then they talk about contemplation, okay, attention, focus, and then awareness. So you see how yoga incorporates the entire system. The same thing happens. And then, of course, yoga also talks about selfless services. Okay, yoga also talks about selfless services. That's another great way to improve your immune system. Okay, selfless service. When I talk about selfless service, I'm talking about all those services where you are lending a helping hand without expecting anything from that. Okay, so no expectations of results, no expectations of fame, or no expectations of any kind of monetary benefit. It's purely out of your own heart that you're doing this. And there are so many evidence-based studies to show that if you engage truly in a selfless service, you are not only improving your immune system, you're also having a very good longevity, okay? That is free from any diseases. Ayurveda says the same thing. Ayurveda goes one step further. Ayurveda says all the practices involving your physical aspects, which is digestion, sleep, and then physical exercise, and then your mind, which is mental exercise, selfless services, and then your emotions, which is meditation, breath practices. All these, in effect, help you to become a wise individual. And then they talk about, both yoga and Ayurveda, they say, if you do all these systems regularly, not just occasionally, but regularly, then even poison will not affect you. That's what they say. So you can imagine how powerful these systems are. Now, the question is, I know a lot of people, they come to me and they say, but we don't have the time to do all these things. How do we do? Is there a shortcut? I don't like shortcuts, but hey, let me tell you, at least something is better than nothing. So if out of 10 practices, if you can incorporate even 5 or 6 of them, or even 4 of them, or even 2, let's say you incorporate 2 of the practices, do it every day. And then once you notice a good change, then start incorporating more practices and more of the procedures that will help you in becoming, a person with a good immune system.
Yeah, Aram, as a yoga practitioner and as a teacher, I so appreciate the completeness of these systems that address both the body, the body, mind, and spirit, or body, mind, and emotions. It's all there. I think that this is getting a little off topic, but oftentimes in the West here, we're a little bit more focused on the physical aspects of yoga, but certainly all those other things are there, and it's really just the more you look into it, the more you find. It's really remarkable.
Yeah, I think so. If there's any take-home message here, so a lot of people, this is one of those few talks that I've done. There are other talks that I've done prior to this, and the thing is, if people come to me, they come to the talks hoping that I'll give them a pill, or I'll say, okay, take this XYZ, this kind of a thing, and that'll improve your immune system. The problem is, I can suggest that. It's not that I don't want to suggest. I can suggest that, but the problem is, if you don't have a proper digestion, if you don't have a proper sleep, and if your mind is all over the place, if you have a lot of fear, worry, anxiety, anger, and all those issues, and if your emotions are out of place, then whatever medications we suggest, whether it is vitamin D or whether it's Chyawanprash or whether it is turmeric, none of this will work, because there are other parts of your thing that is not in place. your digestion is not in place, your mind is not in place, your emotions are all out of place. Okay, in that case, it will not support the digestion of the herbs or any of those things that you're taking. Okay, and then what happens is you lose confidence in that medication, you lose confidence in that practitioner. You say, okay, this doesn't work for me. The problem is it's not working because you're not taking into account all the other aspects of yourself. Okay, so when you talk about your own self, think about not just your physical body, but your mind as well, and your intellect or emotions, or whatever you call it. Okay, so these three have to be taken into account in order to improve immunity, in order to improve longevity, in order to have a very good life. And then once you have that in place, if your digestion is good and if you have a proper sleep, then come to me and I'll give you all kinds of medications if you want to boost up your immune system. But for now, let's focus on these things first.
Great advice, Ram. So I think that we're going to stop here and we'll take some questions, okay?
Yeah, sure.
All right, so I'm going to unmute everybody. There'll probably be a little background noise, and we'll go from there.
Okay.
Most of you, some of you are unmuted, some of you are muting yourselves. So do we have any questions here for Ram?
Well, I don't have a question. I just want to congratulate you, Ram, and thank you for your clear explanation and tips. Right now, I am starting using the mouse with my left hand. But actually, yeah, I have a quick question. How can we improve our digestion?
Yeah, how can we improve our digestion? That's a very good question. How can we improve our digestion? All right. Now, before we go there, before we say how do we improve, just because you're eating well, if you're eating 3 times a day, doesn't mean that you're going to having a good digestive system. Okay, so think about all these things. Do you have a bad breath? Okay, do you have a lot of gas issues? Do you have constipation? Okay, and then do you have bloating? Do you have cramps? Do you feel that you're hungry one day, but then the next day you're not hungry at all? So all these are conditions where your digestion is compromised. Okay, so these are the cardinal symptoms of a poor digestion. Having said that, now, how do you improve your digestion now? Okay, so let me tell you this. I'll give you simple things, okay? Number one, make sure that you schedule your meals, okay? And I know a lot of people, they don't like to eat in the afternoon, and especially a lot of my students and yoga practitioners for that matter, yoga students as well. They like to do their yoga practice, or they like to go out to do their exercise at 12 in the noon. Okay, 12 in the noon is a time when your digestive system is calling for what we call food. And believe me, we have what we call digestive clock. Just like you have a watch on your hand, in the same way, in our body, we have clocks, and these clocks will tell you what activity you should be doing at what time. For example, now the reason why you feel sleepy at 10 in the night is because there is a sleep clock that tells, okay, it's time to go to sleep. In the same way, there is a reason why throughout the world, no matter where we are, at 12 in the afternoon, that's the sun at its peak, everybody goes for a lunch. The reason being that there is a digestive system, there's a digestive clock that tells the brain, which sends signals to the stomach saying that it's time to eat. Okay, now if it's sending a signal saying it's time to eat, and if you don't obey those signals and you go out to do a exercise when it's not the time to do exercise, or if you go out to do your work, or you don't have time because you're in the workplace and you're compromising your digestion through not eating. Okay, so and people have shown this. There are some beautiful research studies where they have shown that people who eat between 11 and 1, they go on to have a very good life, immunity, longevity, everything, as compared to people who have their main meal of the day around 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Okay, that's not the time when you should have a meal. So remember one thing, have a meal exactly at between 11 and 1. That's a big meal. The reason why it's called big meal is because that's a time when the sun is at its peak. Okay, and then you have to do some activities after that. If you're at a workplace, you'll be doing your work. If you're at home, you'll be doing some other work. Okay, so try to have your big meal then. Now, in the evening, when the sun is not at its peak, but the sun is actually setting. Okay, after that, if you're going to eat a big meal, you won't have time to digest it. Okay, because the next activity after dinner is what? sleep. Okay, so you don't want, and when you're sleeping, you don't want to do, the body doesn't want to do any digestive function, because there are other things that body wants to use its energy. So evening is always better to have a small meal. Okay, and then you have a small meal in the evening, and then make sure that between your dinner and sleep, there is a 3-hour gap. That's the minimum time you should give. Okay, so now and sleep, again, like digestion should be done, the sleep clock is very active between 10 and 4 or 10 and 5, 10 in the night and 5 in the morning. So if you now, instead of sleeping, if you now take your computer and start working till 1 or 2 in the morning, you are affecting your sleep habit as well. Okay, and that in turn affects your digestion as well. So make sure that you have a good meal at 12. Make sure that you have a small meal in the evening. Make sure that you have between your last meal and dinner, make sure you keep a 3-hour gap. And if people do not have any health issues in this audience, if you do not have any health issues, make sure that between your dinner and the next day meal, keep a 12-hour gap, minimum. So if you're not diabetic, if you're not hypertensive, if you don't have any other underlying health issues, try to see if you can keep a 12-hour gap between your dinner and the next day morning breakfast, okay? So try to eat after the 12-hour gap. All this will actually improve your digestion. And then, of course, as I mentioned in my book, make sure that you eat a good, organic, freshly prepared if possible. I'll repeat that again. Freshly prepared if possible. No microwaved, no canned, no tinned foods, no previous day's food. I mean, I know it sounds, we don't have time to do all that, but, do your best. So let's say today's lunch was leftover. You can eat in the evening, not a problem, but don't leave it for the next day. Okay, don't microwave it again for the next day. So if you do things like this, it will really improve your digestion.
Oh, great answer, Ram. Do we have any other questions?
Howard, this is Mark. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can, Mark. I
Hey,
see you,
Howard.
Carol. You're next.
Thank you very much. This has been really great. I had one question. I might have misunderstood what was said by Ram. I thought he said at one point, vitamins can compromise your immune system, and you mentioned zinc. Did I hear that backwards?
No, I said vitamins so generally what happens is when your immune system is lowered, people, if you go to a practitioner, whether it's a naturopath or whether an alternative medicinal practitioner, they'll tell you to make sure that your vitamin levels are optimal, okay. Your zinc levels are optimal. So zinc, iron, manganese, all these are required to build up the immune system. Okay.
Okay, so, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mark. Carol? Can't hear you. There's something wrong with your microphone because you're not muted. I don't think you have a good audio connection there, Carol. I still can't hear you, sorry. But you know what, you can email me your, Carol, can you hear me? Well, email me your question, I'll get it to Ram, okay? Do we have any other questions? No?
Yeah,
Okay.
I got muted.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay, me?
Yes.
Oh, Maria is from Spain.
Oh, welcome.
Thank you so much. So Ram, I have a question. For people who are vegetarian, like I am, we have some troubles to find some sources, like vitamin sources, like vitamin D and B12. So, and that affect our immune system. So what would you suggest to us?
Yes, very good question. So B12, so for people who eat a lot of meat, B12 is not an issue, okay? But for people who are vegetarians, B12 is definitely an issue. So make sure that your now the problem is B12 has got a wide range. Okay, if you see the level of the normal values, B12 has got a wide range. Okay, so where should you be in that range? I would suggest that if you're in the lower range, you don't want to be there. Okay, make sure that you're somewhere in the middle, somewhere in the mean range. So that's called optimal. Okay, so Now for people who are vegans or vegetarians, how do you improve your B12? Well, the only way you can do that is taking a B12 supplement. Okay, or if you can, I know some people, I've told them they can eat because even though eggs are not considered exactly a vegetarian, but people, I suggest people, okay, they can take eggs if they want to. Eggs is another good source of vitamin B12. But for vegetarians, first of all, make sure that your levels are optimal. If your levels are not optimal, that's the time when you need to take your B12 supplement. But you have to take it in the form of a supplement. The other thing is, what you can do is, if you have the habit of eating vegetables, look for sea vegetables. The sea actually is a great source of vegetables as well. The only problem is the smell is something which a lot of people don't like it. But things like kelp, and then what else? There are so many other things that come. The sea vegetable. I forgot the names of some of these vegetables, but those are all rich in B12. They're rich in iodine. They support not only thyroid levels, but they're very good to bring your B12 levels as well. So you can take a mixture of the sea vegetables. It can come as a dry powder, and you can add it to your soups and eat it. So that's another great way of incorporating sea vegetables into your diet. That will help build your B12.
Great, thanks, Ron. Carol, are you able to use your?
I think I'm okay. Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Loud and clear.
Doctor, I have celiac. I got diagnosed about 5 years ago, and it's been really hard for me to be able to manage my intestinal issues. I'm at home, I eat, safely, no gluten. But then I've gone to a dietitian. She's told me some things I couldn't eat, and some things at home I had to change. But I'm a foodie, and I have a lot of frustration with being able to keep my system going okay. And so I just started off and on. I started taking a probiotic recently because I don't know what was going on. So I've been at home, and I'm not even eating out anymore. Eating out is a huge challenge, even though they say that it's gluten-free. It isn't in restaurants. So I've gotten into a lot of problems with that. So it's just, I don't know what else I can do. The probiotics seem to have helped a little bit, smooth out my intestinal tract a little, and I'm feeling a little better. But
yeah. So Carol,
I don't know how long it'll last.
Yeah. So for people who do not have an idea, celiac disease is where it's again the inflammation of the gut. So what happens is, now whatever you eat, because there's already an existing inflammation, the gut thinks of the wheat. So the inflammation comes mainly because of the gluten. Gluten is a protein present in the wheat. Okay, and so the gut thinks of the gluten as something foreign, and so it tries to attack it. Okay, so this is one condition where it's a good example where the defense forces turn on itself. Okay, and then so what happens is, now instead of digesting that food, you have a hard time digesting the food. You either, in some cases, people have prolonged diarrhea. In some cases, people have prolonged constipation. So it shows up in different ways altogether. My suggestion is, Carol, what you're doing is good, and probiotic is a great idea. Okay, it builds up the gut system. It prevents any leakage. It brings on the inflammation. My only suggestion is, the probiotic that you take, you're taking it orally. All right. Now, again, it has to go through the gut. Okay. Now, in the gut, we have what we call hydrochloric acid. So how much of the probiotic is actually entering your intestine and stomach, we do not know. Most of it, if it's getting killed with the acidic environment, then the benefits of probiotic is you're not getting anything from that. So my suggestion would be, if you're not doing the way I'm suggesting, do it that way. That is, take your probiotic early in the morning, first thing on an empty stomach, because on an empty stomach, you don't have any acids in your gut. So whatever your probiotic you're taking, you are ensuring that most of it is getting absorbed into the system. So that's a good way. Okay. And then all the things that I talked about, having a mid-meal, a lunch, keeping a gap of 3 hours between your dinner and supper and your bedtime, and then keeping a 12-hour gap between your dinner and breakfast. These will actually help in sustaining the gut. Okay. And then I'm not sure whether it'll definitely cure you, but definitely it will reduce the amount of inflammation that you have in your gut.
Thank you.
Sure.
Right. Do we have any other questions for Ram?
Oh, there was the previous speaker had a question about vitamin D. Vitamin D, unfortunately, you have to see, the problem is we don't step out so much now these days. We have got, I mean, I'm not about the pandemic situation, but in addition to that, before the pandemic situation either, we are most of the time we are indoors, whether it's inside our home or whether it's in our office setup. Okay, we are always inside. We are not exposing ourselves to the sun at all. The only time when we expose ourselves to the sun is whatever little exercise we get. Okay, if it's in the evening, that's not much of a sun. Okay, so vitamin D levels unfortunately go down if you don't expose yourself to the sun. And if the vitamin D levels are low, then you are prone to a lot of problems in the health. Okay, a lot of health problems. Your immune system is depressed. Your immune system is weakened. So you have to have a lot of sun. And I'm seeing this in countries where you have less of individual houses, more of the apartments. Okay, and in those cases, they're hardly getting any sun at all. Okay, so that's a situation where you have to look for some ways to get out and expose yourself to the sun. Of course, if that doesn't work either, then you have to take vitamin D supplements. The only thing is, remember one thing, vitamin A, D, E, and K, these are 4 what we call fat-soluble vitamins, okay? The problem with fat-soluble vitamins is they're hard to digest. So if your digestion is compromised, you can keep taking vitamin D, but the problem is it's not helping your system because you're not digesting it. So once again, we are coming back to the root. Your digestion has to be very good in order to digest the vitamin D or vitamin B12 or your food, whatever food you are taking. So unless your digestive system is very good, there's no point in keeping on taking all these pills because that won't help in any way.
Great. So,
Thank you very much.
go ahead.
Do we have time for one more question?
Yes, time for one more.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Howard, and thank you so much, Ram. This is wonderful. So much to learn from you always. I'm enjoying reading your book, Good Life Practices. And as Howard mentioned, it's a resource for lifelong.
Thank you.
I do have one question. I have very bad seasonal allergies this year, especially. I think something to do with my indoors inside the house. So I have hypothyroidism, so autoimmune disease. So what would you suggest for me to improve my immunity?
Yeah, so this is one thing that we didn't discuss. So the question is, where do these allergies come from? Where does this inflammation come from? Why? What is gone wrong with the immune system? So this is what happens is, even though we expect the defense forces not to work on us, but to defend against external invasions, sometimes for reasons that we do not know, this defense system or the immune system thinks about our own body as foreign and starts attacking it. Okay, so what is happening is, it's like the military or the police trying to attack our own civilians. Okay, even though we are from the same country or we are from the same city. So the same thing happens in our system as well. Our immune system thinks of our own body tissues as foreign and starts attacking it. So one of the conditions where this happens is allergies. Okay, so what happens is now, let's say the pollen allergies. This is the time when there's a lot of flowering happening, and so there's a lot of pollen dust settling in the atmosphere. Whether you like it or not, you are inhaling the pollen dust through your nose, through your mouth. Whenever you open your mouth to breathe, or whenever you open your mouth to talk, you are inhaling the grains, the pollen dust. It's going through your ears. It's going through your eyes. Okay. Now, there's nothing about the pollen grains that is bad, but yet the body thinks of it as something foreign. Okay. And so it stimulates an immune system response. And one of the things that happens during that stage in that immune system response is release of histamine. The histamine is actually required to get rid of the pollen grains. But histamine in that process also causes all these, the eyes burning, the eyes watering, the itching, the sneeze, the cough, and all that. So then what happens is, you tell your doctor, and the doctor says, okay, take an antihistamine. The problem is, you can take an antihistamine to bring down the histamine levels, but then you're still getting exposed to the pollen dust, right? So you're not treating the cause, you're only treating the after effects of it. Okay, so now how do you do that? So you have to tell your body that this pollen dust is not foreign. You have to somehow confuse the body and say this is something that is inherent, that is something natural. Okay, so one way to do that, which I'm doing regularly, is look for honey that is grown locally in your own town, not even in your county, but in your own city. And there are people, this is beautiful about, at least about this country, where within the city, there are people who raise honey from the honeybees from their own system, from their own surroundings. So try to get honey from your own city. Okay, that honey is produced from the bees that are using those flowers from the city itself. And then what happens is you are taking minute amounts of the honey. When you take the minute amount of honey, the body looks at it and says, okay, now there is pollen dust in that honey. The body doesn't react to that. So as you keep taking that over and over again, what happens is the body now looks at it as something that is natural. Okay, so that's one way to improve your immune system, taking locally grown honey. Okay, that's one thing. And then of course, digestive system. Once again, we're coming back to the system of digestion, making sure that you have a very good digestive system. If your digestive system is compromised, you will have allergies, you will have immune problems. Okay, sleep is another thing. You have to have good sleep. These are all things like catch-22 situation. Because you have allergies, you can't sleep, but you need good sleep again to improve your immune system. So you see how they're also interconnected. So good digestive system, physical exercise, mental exercise, making sure that you have a good sleep, and then start taking locally grown honey. That will hopefully help allergies. Hypothyroidism, my suggestion would be, again, sea vegetables is a very good way naturally to improve your thyroid issues.
Ram, thank you so much. If somebody wanted to get in touch with you, what are the ways that people can connect with you?
So if they have
so much, Ram.
Sorry?
Thank you so much, Ram.
Sure. If they have a book, in the book, I have my email address is there. Okay. If not, you can contact me by phone. If not, you can contact me by text message. If not, you can go to either my Facebook profile or LinkedIn profile.
You have a website. I know you have a website.
I have a website as well. Yeah,
which is what?
So it's I have to type it out, or so it's KAIVALYA Wellness. So kaivalyawellness.com.
Now, also on that website, you have some really nice reports, and there is one report there on the immune system, which is in addition to what we talked about today, that people can download as well.
So there is a report in that to improve your digestion and to improve your immune system. And in that report, actually, I've given a spice mix. So for people who are here, one way to improve your immune system is to make a spice mix, and I mentioned the recipe there. It's there in the website. That spice mix is very good to improve your digestion, which will then improve your immune system. Okay, so that spice mix is actually geared towards improving your digestive system. Right. And then I've also mentioned some more things that you can do to improve your digestive system. So go to my website, Kaivalya Wellness, KAIVALYA, kaivalyawellness.com. And then there are, you can download those reports and make use of them.
Yeah, and you can also contact Ram. If you don't have his email, you can contact him via his website as well and find him on Facebook.
And my book, and then of course, I do have, on the Kaivalya Wellness website, I do have other information as well with regard to, grounding and other systems to improve your digestion, to improve your immunity, to improve your overall health. In addition to that, the book is a great resource. Okay, Good Living Practices. It's a great resource for all these things. And then the book also, in the last page of the book, there's all those contacts are given. Wherever all the contacts, so you can contact me through those resources as well.
Great. Ram, I want to thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your wisdom and expertise. It's been a joy and a pleasure to have you here. And,
thank you.
Namaste.
Thank you for organizing this, Howard. And thank you everybody for taking time off of your work. I know this is a
Thank
time
you.
when you're supposed to be at work, but I'm so glad that you come here and to listen to me.
Thank
Do
you.
let me know and do write to me whenever you want.
Yes, thank you everyone for
Thank
being.
you, Ron.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Howard. Thank you, Howard.
My pleasure.
Thank you,
Thank
Ram.
you.
Regards-
Bye, Susanna. Bye, Maria.
This is Camila, if you remember her.
It's in his book. Okay,
Bye.
Sorry, guys. And this is Emilio. So
Hey.
all my kids, when they were babies, so I have to show him now. How
Bye.
now we haven't seen like 15 years or so. Okay.
All right.
All right.
So long, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you.